I've lived in my current house for nearly 2 years now, and I'm fairly familiar with the streets, and driving home from work is a pure muscle memory at this point. Despite living in a fairly remote area surrounded by forests and trees, the roads are very well lit on my street. As you pass the trees on the left-hand side on my street, eventually they open up to the hill that my house sits on, and my driveway with more houses and trees further down the dead-end road. One night I got off from work at the typical time and headed home. Yet as I drove down my street, I accidentally drove past my house. In the past 2 years, I've never done this, so at the end of the street, at the dead end, I turned around and headed back. Yet, as I drove back, my house was not there. Just a never-ending curtain of trees along the road, which was very odd. I got to the bottom of the street, turned around again, and I passed by where my house should be, but nothing was there but trees. I felt like I was going insane. I kept driving towards a dead end and turned around again. As I shifted the gears in my car, I glanced in the rearview mirror to see there was a man in the back seat of my car. He was tall and slender and bent over at the waist. He noticed that I was looking at him, and he looked up, and I realized that he didn't have a face. He then stood up. I stared at him puzzled because as he stood, his entire upper body went through the roof of my car as though it wasn't even there. He then turned and walked away, passed through the trunk of my car, and I watched him slowly walk towards the edge of the forest and enter it. Spooked, I quickly drove down the street, and suddenly my house reappeared where it was supposed to be. I want to share a story that is 100% real, for me at least. I'm an RN, a registered nurse at a local hospital which has 2 separate buildings. I finished my shift at around 10 in the evening, and this particular building was closing. It's not the main building. The lights went out, but not completely, because at the 3rd floor there was this kidney dialysis unit. I was waiting for my coworker from the 3rd floor in the car with another coworker, and I was at the main level. The glass door and windows were behind me, and I could see them clearly from my mirror. There were little offices divided with thin drywall, and between the 2 sections of them was the door. All of the wall at the level had big glass windows from top to bottom. All of a sudden I saw legs running, just legs, a lot of legs, wearing scrubs and running through space separators behind the glass doors. Of course I turned around, and then I got out of the car. I was still watching them running. They didn't have a body, and I was shocked. I asked my friend if she had seen it, and she didn't. I kept watching them running and disappearing. It felt like my head was going to explode. There was no way that I was going that crazy. This was real, and I was seeing it. The building that I was working at was not for emergency incidents. Therefore, there was no reason for staff to be running so quickly, even if it was real and not my imagination, if you know what I mean. 10 years later, my mother got sick and was hospitalized at the main building. She died from a heart attack. The nurses there were running to get to her, and I remembered what I saw that night. I'd like to know others' opinions on that. I can't tell it to anybody because they'll say the same thing, that it was my imagination. I was tired or something like that. But I was not tired. In fact, I was lucky enough to be working at that part of the hospital where the pace was completely smooth and calm. To this day, this is still very real to me. Very real. So this happened to me a few months ago. My 2 friends and I decided to take a trip to LA just for fun. Keep in mind that we're from the East Coast and don't know anybody in Los Angeles. On the last day of our vacation, we had to check out of the hotel at 11 a.m. The night before we had gotten back to the hotel was really late, so we ended up sleeping in. We knew it would be difficult to get completely packed up and ready by 11 a.m., so we decided to go to the front desk and request a late checkout by 12. We had done this at another hotel before with no issues, and this place wasn't really at capacity with guests, so we figured that it was a reasonable request. I drew the short straw and was tasked with going to the front desk. The elevator in this hotel was really old and quite small, and I found it to be a bit creepy. I also had this mild claustrophobia, so I avoided the elevator and walked down the 3 flights of stairs. I asked the receptionist if we could have a late checkout, and gave her our room number. She looked at me surprised and said, "Yes, we approved you for a late checkout just a few minutes ago." I was confused and asked her to elaborate. Apparently a girl had come down a minute or 2 before me to ask for a late checkout from our room number, and had walked out of the building. At this point, I figured that maybe one of my friends had, for whatever reason, decided to take the elevator down and ask before I did. I grumbled a bit at this because, well, I had to walk down those stairs for no reason, and it didn't make sense why they would ask me to go and then beat me to it. I got back to the room, and to my surprise, both of my friends were there. One of them was taking a shower, and the other one was packing. It didn't look like either of them had left the room either. So I told them what the receptionist had said, and they were shocked. Neither of them had left the room, and it seemed too big of a coincidence that somebody would have the same request as us at the same time and make the mistake of giving the receptionist our room number. I have no idea who that girl was that made the request. They started joking that maybe it was me from another dimension or something like that, but yeah, that whole kind of a mindset or way of thinking sounds really eerie to me. I only have one experience, but there was a witness. It was a small one, but it happened, so I might as well share it, right? I was living at home a few years back. My mother's house is one of those miniature lower middle class homes where all of the rooms are so tiny. So there isn't a lot of room in my bedroom. If two people are in my room at the same time, you have to move around them. I'm standing at one end of the bedroom on my phone when my sister walked in and started talking to me about something. So I sat my phone down on the glass top vanity, a little table with a mirror for makeup and stuff, with this distinct clack of the phone against the thick glass, and I stand there talking to my sister for a minute or so. When the conversation is over and she's about to turn around and leave, I reach for my phone, but it isn't there, and there's confusion. Still standing in the same spot, I glance around the room and spot my phone lying on the dresser by my sister, on the opposite side of the room, right next to her. My mind was 100% ready to just write this off and think, well, that was weird, but whatever, and just move on with the rest of my day. But then I noticed the look of abject horror on my sister's face. "You set your phone down on the vanity." And she was right. I had set it down on the vanity when she walked in. I heard the clack when I laid it down, and it hadn't moved. It would have been pretty awkward in my small room for me to have maneuvered around my bed and my sister to place the phone on the dresser next to her. It made absolutely no sense. But it got me thinking, how often do I write off experiences like this because nobody else is around? I was so ready to just not think about it, but believe it or not, me and my sister think about it all the time now. I look around a lot trying to find answers to this. For context, I frequently wake up to black imagery like floating spider-like figures or dots. It's really horrible, but this time was something completely different. I remember before falling asleep, I felt anxiety. I don't know why, but something woke me up and I immediately saw small squares on only one specific area of my wall. I opened my eyes to make sure that I was not dreaming, which is something that I always do. After 7 seconds, it disappeared and soaked into the wall, turning from black small lines to glowing white ones instead. The weirdest part is when I woke up, I immediately knew that it was a graph. That was the word that popped into my conscience. I can't tell if somebody else is controlling my reality, but one thing I do know is that I know exactly what I'm looking at upon the first seconds of waking up, and I'm left to be curious afterwards. I'm not sure if this would be considered a glitch or not, but it does trip me out nonetheless. Every morning I take the same bus, and I have since I moved to the area that I now live in 5 years ago. There's this apartment complex that's always on my right on the main drag that the bus takes to go to downtown. In front of it, there was always, since I was a small child, been a large apple tree. I remember the large apple tree because when we first moved to the area when I was really young, my mom rode her bike with me in one of those seats on the back, and I loved looking at it. Anyways, for the last week, that tree has been gone. I guess trees can get chopped down, right, which is pretty obvious. So I decided to investigate it, and there's no stump where that tree used to be. It's just gone like it was never there. Additionally, one of that same town's more ritzy apartment complexes disappeared that week too. I looked for it all over and it's gone. It wasn't me being on the wrong street or anything because I remember the office complex by it. I feel like a shift recently happened. I'm not fully sure how to explain it because even I think it sounds 100% crazy. Yesterday, on November the 8th of 2021, I was driving down the interstate when I noticed some weird elongated hexagon-shaped kind of falling down out of nowhere. It seemed transparent because I'd go from being able to somewhat seeing it to not seeing it, all while I kept watching it in the same spot. Then it turned into a small flock of birds which would phase in and out of being able to being seen and then not seeing it. Then they just disappeared, and a bigger bird spawned where the smaller flock was before. After the bigger bird disappeared, I then noticed 5 airplane trails in the sky that weren't there before. Could it be just birds or me just seeing things that are impossible? I just felt like I saw something that I wasn't supposed to see, and it just kind of slowly changed into different things, slowly kind of phasing in and out, but I'm not sure. I feel like I'm going crazy, but you tell me if I'm not. By the time that I tried recording it, it was too late. This might not be as weird or creepy as some of the other stories here, but I'm actually confused. Last summer I went on a road trip to Mozar, Bosnia, Herzegovina with my boyfriend. One night we had a dinner in a traditional Bosnian restaurant, and we got a photograph of the staff posing and dressed up in traditional Bosnian clothes as a gift. I would imagine that other people got this as a gift too. I took a photo with me and I brought it back home because I wanted to keep it as a memory of our trip. When I got home, I put the photo in a drawer in my bedroom desk, and that was basically it. Fast forward 3 to 4 months, and I was getting ready for something, and I walked into my room and I saw this restaurant picture sitting on my desk vertically. And it wasn't just sitting there randomly. It was leaned up against some object that I had on my desk, so it was fully on display, like it was supposed to be seen or shown to everybody else. Of course, I was confused, but thought that maybe my mom was looking for something in one of my drawers and put the photo there. I asked her if she was looking for something or if she put the photo up on the desk, and she said that it was not her. And she said that she thought that I was the one that put the picture on the desk. It was at that point that we both dismissed it because we thought that one of us must have done it unknowingly. The thing is that there's only 2 people living in that house, and nobody else had access to that room, so I saw the picture and just put it back in the drawer and continued living life. That happened a few weeks ago, but now I'm absolutely creeped out. Literally an hour ago, I was just sitting in my room chilling and watching a movie, and I hear something fall on the floor near the desk. I went to see what it was, and there is this picture from that restaurant just lying there. It was in the drawer that I put it in, and it somehow fell from the drawer. Who knows how that happened, and it went back and landed on the floor. Where did it come from? I wasn't even near my desk. I was across the room on my bed. What is going on here, and how did that picture get on the floor? Is it something having to do with a haunting, or is this some kind of a sign from the Matrix? The weirdest thing that has ever happened to me happened a few days ago. I live alone in a condo and was here all week. I drank 1 to 2 drinks from a new bottle of expensive tequila after work. I work from home, I should mention. I left the bottle on my dining room table throughout the week. It was about 75 to 80% full on Tuesday. When I went to get some on Thursday after work, it was all gone except for 1 shot. Nobody lives with me. There was no sign of forced entry into my apartment. I was home 98% of the time this week. And who would break in and drink tequila and leave a little bit left in the bottle? And no, I'm not a binge drinker or an alcoholic who blacked out. I've been seriously sick drinking that much, and I have a very low tolerance for it now. The cork lid was on the bottle when I last left it. There's no way that it evaporated either. I had a shot glass partially full on Wednesday, and it was still the same volume on Thursday. No leaks in the bottle anywhere. I have racked my brain trying to figure out how this is possible. I don't believe in anything supernatural and haven't seen anything outright, but this is the first time that I have truly no answers. This will probably get buried, but I need to share it. About 5 years ago, I lived in this interesting house, to say the least. No locks on any of the bedroom doors, and our light bulbs would go missing from the ceiling fixtures, but that is a story for another day. Anyways, during the summer that year, we were having serious issues with flies getting into the house, to the point of where we had flies hanging everywhere around the house. Needless to say, I got really great at stalking and killing them, as gross as that might sound. Well, anyways, I was sitting on the couch and saw a fly, so I followed it around the house using my newly honed stealth skills, determination, and my designated smashing shoe ready to kill that thing as soon as it landed. It finally landed on the wall next to the couch, so I sat down on the other end of the couch and slowly crept right up to it so that it wouldn't notice me. I had my eyes focused on it with my weapon in hand, and I was ready to go. And as soon as I was about to go and kill it, it just phased into the wall, very strangely. It completely disappeared in front of my eyes. So obviously I started to freak out, yelling for my roommate to help me look for it, thinking maybe it just flew off or something, but to no avail. It was nowhere to be seen after that. Usually pesky flies like that will fly around again if they just fly off real fast, but that's not what happened here. So either it's a ghost of one of the flies I already killed that came back to mess with me, or my living room wall was some kind of a portal or safe haven for the flies. There is something that's bothered me for over a decade now, so I wanted to post to get somebody else's perspective on this. When I was a teenager, my parents and I lived in a large house, where their master bedroom was on the first floor, and my bedroom was upstairs with the other bedrooms. I have an older brother, but he had moved out many years at this point. My bedroom was at the end of a long carpeted hallway, and the stairs were all the way on the other side of the second floor, so it wasn't uncommon to not hear somebody approach my room. It was around 10 p.m. and my parents had gone to bed. It was a school night, so I was supposed to be sleeping too. But anyways, I was awake messaging my friend on AOL Instant Messenger, and yeah, I'm showing my age by saying that, but anyways, my door was barely cracked open at the time, and my bedroom light was off, but my attached bathroom light was on, which dimly illuminated my bedroom doorway. I looked up to see my bedroom doorway swing open 18 inches or so, and my mom's dimly lit face looking at me for 1 to 2 seconds from the hallway, and then the door shut. My dog was with me at the time lying on the bed, and he also saw the same thing, and he looked up too. And after the door shut, he sat up in attention at the end of my bed like he was ready to protect me. My mom has very dark hair, and I remember thinking her hair looked a lot lighter in that moment, and I bring this up because it'll be important for the story, as you'll see. My mom has always been quite passive-aggressive, so my first thought was that she saw what I was doing and that I was awake on the computer and was angry and just stormed off. So I yelled out to her and I said, "Mom, Mom," several times, and she didn't respond. Our home phone also functioned as an intercom system between our bedrooms, and yes, again, I'm showing my age. So I used my phone in my room to call my mom by her bedside, and it took her several rings to pick up, and when she answered, she sounded tired. I started defending myself and apologizing for still being awake, and then asked what she wanted and why she didn't respond when I yelled out to her by my room. She was quite confused for a couple of seconds and then started asking me what I was talking about because my call had apparently woken her up. I asked her what she was talking about because I had just seen her open my bedroom door, look at me, shut the door, and walk away. She had no idea what I was talking about and sounded generally annoyed that I had woken her up. She told me that I shouldn't be waking her up and just to go to bed, and hung up the phone. After that conversation, I started freaking out because I knew what I saw. I wasn't tired or on the verge of falling asleep on the bed or anything like that could possibly explain some kind of a hallucination caused by drifting off to sleep or something. Then I started to realize something. I began thinking about how my mom's hair looked lighter than normal when I saw her, as I mentioned earlier, and then I realized that it looked just like my aunt's hair before she lost it all to chemotherapy. My mom and aunt look almost identical in stature, build, and in their faces, with the only difference being my aunt's hair being a dirty blonde color. Other than that, they both kept their hair at shoulder length and had the same soft waves. My aunt unfortunately died from her breast cancer a month or so prior to this happening, so my mind jumped to it being some kind of a paranormal experience. I didn't share those details with anybody after this happened out of fear that they would think that I was crazy. I haven't had anything like this happen since. It's worth noting for anybody who looks at my post history here that I do have epilepsy, but I've never had any kind of visual experiences or hallucinations, and I didn't have any other symptoms of my focal seizures when this happened. I've heard a lot of these stories about when you die, you get sent into an alternate universe where things are more or less the same, except minor things change, such as little details being different, designs are different, or maybe even everyday things are different. So to get straight to the point, there is a painting in my house which is a black and white tree with all its leaves on the ground with branches hanging over the bench. I also have an electric fireplace which was on the main wall. I woke up in the middle of the night to do you know what. The pains were terrible, so I remember passing out. I woke up and it was 1:27, and I remember leaving to go to the restroom at 1:23. So that was pretty strange, and when I finished up in the bathroom and walked out, the painting was different. It had leaves on the trees and the leaves from the ground were gone. My fireplace had an extended wall behind it too. I have lived in this house for years, so I can definitely tell the difference. I don't know what to do or where to post this, but I found this forum and I thought it would fit well here. If I tell anybody I know, like my family, they'll only laugh at me, but I'm thinking, after I found this forum, that I experienced a glitch in the Matrix. I was just telling a friend this story today, and I thought I'd also post it here for your glitching pleasures. About 5 years ago, I was serving at a Greek diner, and it was one slow night, and I see a woman walk in, about 50 years old, with a little boy tagging along behind her, and he looked to be about 10, with a yellow shirt, and they both sat down. I saw them head to the table and take a seat, and I stood behind the bar and started pouring water to bring over to them. The kid was about the right age to be too old for our kids' cup, so I casually asked the other server working, "Hey Nicole, do you think that little guy's big enough for an adult cup, or should I bring him the smaller one instead?" Nicole looked up at me confused and said, "What little guy?" "Well, that little boy that came in with that lady over there." I glanced over and now she's seated alone. "She came by herself," said Nicole. "No, I saw him. He was about yay high, yellow shirt, maybe 10. She looked at me and said, "Okay, now you're creeping me out. She came in alone, I swear. There is no little boy there." I was shook. I asked Nicole to take this table for me. Part of me wishes I had told the woman, but I was afraid she'd think that I was nuts. So, at that time, believe it or not, I thought I was nuts. I swear on all holy, on everything that is. I saw a little boy just clear as day like anything else. He was there, and then he just wasn't. I kept an eye on the table the entire time, and that little boy never returned, so he wasn't in the bathroom for a while, nor did he leave to some other part of the restaurant with somebody else, and that woman just walked out by herself. My friend asked the woman in question about the little boy when she took the table, and that older woman denied ever coming in or seeing that little boy at all. This story happened to me about 10 years ago. I was working retail at this mall at a clothing kids store called Justice. I was a college student then, but working close to home during the summer months. To be honest, I wasn't really crazy about that job, so it didn't really bother me that they had me on this call-in type schedule for my shifts. As you might guess, call-in shifts were not guaranteed working hours, so I'd call in an hour before the shift to see if they wanted me to go in. That was me and the other influx of college students that were working there. And that's how we knew whether or not we were going to have any hours that day or that week at all. Now, in the strip mall across the street, there was another Justice store, but our stores never collaborated or worked together at all. There were two of the same stores from the same company, yet they were completely separate businesses. Midway through the summer, I got this job down pretty well, and I knew what to do. I knew all the managers and coworkers, and it was generally a pleasant place to work. One afternoon, I picked up the phone to call in and ask if they needed me to come in or not. And my manager, a genuinely nice woman, probably in her early 50s, is completely shocked that I'm calling in. She tells me they already found a cover because a girl claiming to be my best friend called the store to tell them that I wasn't coming in and that I had been in some kind of a terrible accident on the highway. This person gave them my name and said that I was in a coma at the hospital surrounded by family and friends, and my parents didn't know whether or not I was actually going to make it. My manager sounded genuinely concerned, as did the assistant manager. Nobody else shared my name at the store, and we even called the store across the street, and they did not have anybody by my name working there, nor did they hear about anything like that happening to one of their employees. The crazy thing is that I'd been having a lot of dreams of getting into a car accident involving a huge semi During the summer, and this was even before this incident had occurred, I asked my friends if they had played a sick joke, and they all had no idea what I was talking about. Besides, my friends are not the type of people to joke around about stuff like that. They're people that I trust with my life, not the kind to joke about death. The only other explanation would be a customer, maybe. But one, I didn't have a name tag with my name on it, and two, even if I did, who remembers retail associates' names unless they're going to go out of their way to write a review and complain? And there was no motive. I never had any unpleasant interactions with anybody at the store. And even if I did, it was a mom and a 7-year-old daughter or something like that shopping at the store. So do I think there could be an explanation for this that is more grounded in reality? Absolutely. But nothing is adding up. Think of it what you will, but I still think about that phone call and feel uneasy when I get on the highway or anytime I drive by a semi. It was 2019-2020 New Year's Eve, and I was celebrating with my family. The countdown had started. 10, 9, 8. And as soon as the countdown hit the number 1, I felt my mind was sent into another reality. I was sent into a dark living room of somebody else's house where, almost immediately, a fair-haired, bearded stranger peeped from the door of another room. He smiled and came over and asked if everything was okay. For some reason, I felt this deep, close connection to this stranger. And then I returned to reality, confused from what just happened. And that vision lasted only about 2 or 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Everybody around me was cheering, and I joined them in celebration. And I didn't think much about it after that. On that same month, around January 20th, 2020, this was a few months before the lockdown hit my country, I returned to the city I was attending college to do some finals. One evening after the finals, I felt like I was in the mood for a date, so I opened up my Grindr app and found somebody I'd never seen before around. Some pics were not that clear, some were blurry, others were taken from odd angles, but I could tell he was my type. We chatted a bit. After that, he asked me out, so we fixed a date for the very next day. It was a Saturday night, and it was around 10 p.m. I was waiting for him at this place that we decided to meet at. Soon after, he called my number, informing me that he was close. And I saw this dark figure approaching me from the other side of the road. And I thought, well, that's gotta be him. Although it was dark and I couldn't see him very well. But he came closer, and the light beam of the lamppost I was standing next to was starting to shine on him. My date was the same guy from the vision. I froze with shivers all over my body. I cannot explain why, but his pics didn't resemble at all the person who, at that moment, stood in front of me. I must have looked shocked as he smiled gently and pressed my shoulder and asked, "Are you okay?" Again, another shock, and at that moment I had deja vu. And when I came back, I introduced myself, laughing about that awkward first impression. He surely thought that I was struck by his look. And God, what a splendid date we did have. It'd be quicker if I didn't list all the things we talked about because it was so much. When he drove me back to the dorm that I was staying at, he asked me if I wanted to join him for dinner at his place the next day, and I agreed. The day after, I went to the given address, and he welcomed me, and he had me put my jacket in the living room. He told me to join him in the kitchen, so he turned off the lights in the living room. So I stood there in the dark, having another weird and pretty awesome deja vu. To make this thing creepier, he actually peeped out of the kitchen door and laughed, thinking that I was actually acting a little bit too shy. I lived the exact same picture that I saw in my vision right then and there. Up until recently, it's been one of the best nights of my life. I've never felt so close to somebody I barely knew. For the time we used to hang out, I felt a deep and strange connection between the both of us, as if I had known him for a lifetime. We dated for half a year and eventually had to stop seeing each other for some other reasons, but that person still holds a very special place in my heart. The last New Year's Eve I was really hoping for another vision, but nothing happened. No strange experience, but nonetheless, I'll always carry that deja vu with me, and that person that I met I will always hold in very high regards. So hear me out. I also want to mention before I start telling you my story that I was not high at all. I have a battery in my mouse, and in order to get it out, you have to open the top. Except it's tapped shut, so you have to really pry it open. Essentially, my mouse fell on the ground, and I picked it up straight away. It then wouldn't work, so I thought to open it because maybe the battery came loose. It took me a minute because the tape was hard to peel off with my short nails. Once I get it off, there was no battery in there. And there was no way the battery could have just come out without the top opening up at all. Then I find the battery a bit away on the floor. I'm the last person to believe in any of this glitch in the Matrix stuff, but things like this have been happening a lot recently as of late, and it's starting to become very strange. A bracelet gift to my daughter breaks and then reappears with a second identical, also broken bracelet. My mother visited about 6 months ago and gifted my daughter, 5, a bracelet. The bracelet was a plate with my daughter's name inscribed onto it, and a thin chain. She wore it for a few days, and as expected it broke. I put it into a jewelry bowl in my bedroom, thinking I'd remember to try and fix it later. I forgot about the bracelet and moved on to doing other things that needed to be done. Yesterday in passing I catch a glimpse of that bracelet, and I go to pull it out only to realize there is a second identical bracelet right there with it. Both are broken in a similar spot, and for the same reason, the chain was very thin. My mother could not have put them there because my daughter's bracelets had already broken after she had left. I literally do not know where this could have come from, only that it belongs to somebody in a parallel universe, perhaps.